Greetings and welcome to week 2 of PD in the LC, or Professional Development in the Learning Community. I'm Dr. John Thomsen. Welcome back. Hope things are going well for you. In class 2 or week 2, we're going to be taking a look at professional contexts, purposeful negotiations, and professional learning communities. Essential questions include: why is knowing your professional context and being able to anticipate negotiation issues important when conducting a professional development needs analysis? So really understanding your local context and being able to anticipate the give and take required when conducting your needs analysis is really an essential question and objective of week 2. What are the primary characteristics of a professional learning community? I've shared a few documents with you that can help shed some light on what a PCL is and what it isn't, and hopefully you'll be able to grow and reflect in that area in week 2. How do you best negotiate in your context and build support when deeply held beliefs differ among stakeholders? When you go into any school or any school district, there's going to be a whole range of deeply held beliefs among the teachers, the support staff, the administrators, the students, and the parents. And how do you best function and negotiate within that context when those beliefs differ? In some places, they differ greatly. And finally, why is aligning the mission, vision, values, goals, priorities, ideas, and needs of an organization important when at the same time trying to increase student achievement? So the importance of alignment throughout the system in order to achieve better outcomes for students. The assignments for week 2, you're going to review this PowerPoint. You're on your way. Read Caffarella chapters 4 through 6, now getting into the specifics of developing a professional development plan for a local context. Read Duford and Full in chapter 1. Again, not a lot of pages, but very dense, thick reading. You may have to read and reread. That's okay. I've supplied you with 3 PDFs on professional learning communities. 2 of them taken from an environmental scan. Those are out there about PDFs. About PLCs, and one of them I have developed with colleagues over my career to really try to delineate the personal characteristics of team members within a PLC. Interested in having you read that and think deeply about that. Enjoy. There's the online discussion forum, just like in week 1. We're going to ask you to complete an adult learning theories assignment. So you're going to review the rubric, and then you're going to complete the adult learning theories chart, which is a compare and contrast exercise. And then you're going to do a professional journal article review. Really important for steps 6 and 7 that you carefully review the rubric, and again, set up your paper or your chart based upon the left-hand column rubric areas. And then really take a look at that exceeds expectation, and those would be your targets for the assignments. So in terms of introduction to professional learning communities, my working definition is: a PLC are educators committed to working collaboratively in an ongoing process of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students they serve. So there are many different definitions of PLCs out there. My working definitions: adults, educators committed working together in a collaborative process through collective inquiry and action research. Action is key. There's specific steps people are taking to achieve better results for the students they serve. And again, it's realized when students are achieving at higher rates, and a key word here, it's educators serving kids. It's educators serving students, parents, schools, and communities. And it's about commitment and collective effort. So going back to 2006 with Duford and Aker, and this is a resource that is referenced in the syllabus. PLC's 6 key characteristics. Number 1, a shared mission, vision, values, goals, and focused on student learning. Very, very clear. Many schools say they are PLCs, yet often they lack a shared mission, a vision, values, goals, and focusing on student learning. You know that you've hit this one when you can come across a document within your own organization that carefully delineates the mission, the vision, and the values, what the goals are, and what the steps are to increase student learning. And a lot of people say they are involved in a PLC, yet they don't have this baseline thing in place. This is a document or a set of documents that should be collectively developed, refined, and improved over time. There is a collaborative culture with a focus on learning, collective inquiry into best practice and current reality. Again, what is the research, what is the best practice, and how do we incorporate that into our context, our current reality? Action orientation, learn by doing, really looking for specific action plans. What are the steps? Who's responsible? What resources are needed? How do we know if we have achieved them? And how do we know after we've taken a lot of action, a lot of steps, that it's resulting in students improving performance? Again, a collective commitment to continuous improvement, and again, results oriented. Are students improving over time based upon the specific actions taken by this collective committed group of educators? So, 6 characteristics of a PLC based upon the work of Duford and Aker. So 2008, 12 new learnings from PLCs, again taken from the same authors. PLCs, the necessity and challenge of shaping a school culture. School cultures are very, very powerful, but when you start to work on PLC practices, sometimes the organizational culture, the history, the tradition collides with PLC practice. And so it's important that we start to challenge and reshaping that school culture. There's a tendency for hard facts about school improvement to be distorted into half-truths. People have a tendency to rationalize, and when we take a look at student achievement data and the improvement steps, sometimes things are distorted and people are not really honest about what's occurring, what the barriers are, and who's responsible for what. In PLCs, you learn by doing, and sometimes when you learn on the way, there's some false starts. There's some failure, but if it's truly a learning organization, a professional learning organization, professional learning community, you're going to learn forward, you're going to fail forward, you're going to not only celebrate your positive results, but at times celebrate your failures because you've learned what has not worked. So we learn by doing. In a PLCs, teachers use common formative assessments to guide real-time instruction, reteaching, and extensions. And what we know about common formative assessments is it's graded. It's scored and not graded. Scoring helps the students and the teachers know how the journey of learning is going. Grading is a summative piece. That's what you do at the end, but those common formative assessments have to guide the instruction of the teacher, the reteaching, and the extensions for the students that already know what we want them to do. We need to be providing teachers with relevant and timely information as a catalyst for improving teaching. Typically, that's the scores from the CFAs, the common formative assessments, or any other relevant data that teachers would use to guide their instruction. There needs to be a systemic response when students don't learn, and a process for extending learning for those who already know it. Again, in a PLC, there's 4 key questions. What do we want students to learn to be able to do? That's number 1. Number 2, how do we know that they know it? That's the formative assessment. Number 3, what do we do with the students that don't know what we want them to know? That's the systemic process. That's how we respond when students don't learn what we want them to learn. And question 4 is, what do we do with the students that already know what we want them to know? And that's the second part of number 6, extending learning for those who already know it. And again, that needs to be systemic to reteach and to get caught up to speed those kids that haven't learned it for whatever reason. It's not about blame, it's recognizing they haven't learned it, and then a process for extending the learning that for those kids that already know what we want them to know. And again, that's all based on the formative assessment. PLC should be the guiding work of collaborative teams. Again, teams collectively committed to making sure all students learn and grow in the areas as identified by the curriculum. In a PLC, there's widespread leadership, there's a role in central office. And so as my phone is ringing, you're going to be picking that up. I'm not going to be answering that, but central office or district office needs to support all this work in the PLC at the building level. And then there is widespread leadership. Typically there are grade level leaders, there's department leaders, and there's high alignment between the work and the way we work and the importance of student achievement as a result of our work. The classroom is a learning community, and again, there's more questions than answers, and just making sure that the teachers partner with the students, the teachers are partnering with each other, all the stakeholders are collectively committed around the work of making sure all students learn and grow. There's a need for a common language, making sure that throughout the system, teachers throughout the grade levels, throughout the school and district are using the same language so there's no confusion. Very clear difference between a common formative assessment and a common summative assessment. The reteaching and extending and making sure all of our work is framed around that language. The benefit of a contemporary context, making sure that as we continue to grow and develop, we're recognizing we have to depart from the industrial model of a traditional school and ensure that students are not slotted and blocked into separate courses based upon our perception of their ability, and that we have a system that is inclusive, that is dealing with equity, and making sure that all students learn and grow over time in a very, very heterogeneous manner. And the power of stories. Those schools, those grade levels, those districts that have embraced the PLC work should tell their stories. And there is the power of student achievement data and quantitative data, but also sometimes even more powerful is the stories of students and teachers as they've grown and developed through a PLC. Thoughts about culture, because when you start trying to incorporate professional learning communities into a traditional culture, there's going to be conflict and dissonance and disagreements, possibly arguments. We have to keep a pulse on culture. It's impossible for a school or district to develop the capacity to function as a PLC without undergoing profound cultural shifts. So again, comparing the traditional factory model of school to a model in which committed professionals are ensuring all students are learning and growing in the areas that we want them to grow. That there's a big difference between those two, and it's about having respectful conversations and about developing the collective capacity and commitment to make sure all students learn and grow. The school's culture dictates the curriculum, instruction, opportunity to learn, and daily decisions made by educators. And so really, the culture is what it is. The culture is really not defined by what we think it is, but how the curriculum allows for all students to engage in the opportunity to learn, to be engaged in meaningful and timely interventions as well as extensions. While it is true that educators shape their school cultures, it is probably more accurate to say that their school culture shapes them. Think about a brand new teacher coming into a school or a district that's been around a long time. It's going to only take a short amount of time until that new teacher, with all their new ideas, energy, and excitement and best practice theory just secured through their undergrad, is quickly changed into what the traditional school culture or that school culture has in place. So again, many of us are shaped by the cultures of the organization in which we join. This is my favorite one, a good person in a bad system. The system wins out all the time. So PLCs is about changing that system to ensure that each student is successful regardless of what teacher they have. Every school has a culture. Some are hospitable, others are toxic. A school's culture can work for or against improvement and reform. Some schools are populated by teachers and administrators who are reformers, others by educators who are gifted and talented at subverting reform. And many school cultures are indifferent to reform. So really, the culture is what it is, and it's important that as an educational leader, you work collectively with stakeholders to improve things over time, and culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you got to work on the culture. Substantive and lasting change will ultimately require a transformation of culture, the beliefs, assumptions, expectations, and habits that constitute the norm for the people throughout the organization. So really, if we're going to do any meaningful work here, it's got to go to the core, that is the collective beliefs, practices, assumptions, expectations, and habits of the organization. And really, we're talking about the work of leadership. Meaningful, substantive, sustained improvement can occur in an organization if and only if those improvements become anchored in the culture of the organization, the assumptions, beliefs, values, expectations, and habits. Know your culture. And then the question is, how do you measure culture? And typically, I've been involved in school accreditation visits, and it doesn't take long for an accreditation team to come in to realize where a school or a district's culture is at. Is it a traditional slot and block, sort and select culture, or is it a collaborative, collective commitment wrapping around our students, making sure each student is learning and growing, and the system has a predictable response when they don't learn and grow, and they have a predictable response when we see the students already know what we want them to learn to be able to do, and they provide opportunities for extensions. Again, the accreditation piece, we go in, we look for primary artifacts. Is there a mission statement with values and beliefs and expectations? Is it reviewed? Is it updated? Is it posted on a website? Is there clear trend data that disaggregates and aggregates all student skills to make sure everyone's learning and growing? Are there specific improvement plans directed at improvement goals? Is there time built in the schedule for committed adults to work together to make things better for kids? Are there continuous improvement practices, whether those are short cycle assessment windows or where there is formative assessment practices guiding instruction for teaching and reteaching and extension? And is our results publicly shared and celebrated over time? Again, those are the primary artifacts I'd be looking for in a professional learning community that really reveals the culture of the school and the district. So, wrapping up this brief PowerPoint presentation, the assignments for the class. About to finish the PowerPoint, Caffarella 4 through 6, do forward and full in Chapter 1. 3 PLCs PDFs, online discussion, you got a couple of those. Make sure you're engaged in deep, meaningful dialogue and debate, but be clear and concise. You got your adult learning theories chart, and you have your review of the, you got a journal article review. Again, carefully review those rubrics so you make sure you understand the expectations, you know what the target is, and really make sure before you submit those things, you have a trusted, skilled reviewer on all of those so it ends well for everyone. I hope you're going to enjoy week 2, and I hope you continue to enjoy your learning journey. Again, if there's anything I can do, please do not hesitate to reach out. Have a great week 2.